Welcome to Reading the Grid, the podcast fueling your Formula One passion. Each week, we explore the stories behind books, movies, and shows that highlight the history of this dynamic sport. Buckle up for a fast-paced journey through Formula One. Now let's jump into it. In today's episode, Speed, Rivalry, and Legacy, Revisiting Rush in today's F1 era, we will be reviewing the 2013 blockbuster Rush. Rush is a biographical sports drama written by Peter Morgan and directed by Ron Howard, chronicling the intense rivalry between two legendary Formula One drivers, James Hunt and Niki Lauda, during the 1970s. The film's climax centers on the iconic 1976 season, a pivotal moment in motorsport history where their fierce competition on and off the track reaches new heights, especially following the dramatic Nürburgring race.
Rush brings to life one of the most dramatic seasons in Formula One, blending the technical aspects of racing with the intense emotions that define the competition. For non-F1 fans, Rush serves as an entry point into the world of motorsport, making it accessible and relatable. The movie transcends the technicalities of Formula One by focusing on the human story, the rivalry, ambition, and sacrifices of Hunt and Lauda. During the episode, we'll dive into our initial impressions of the film, the appeal for fans and non-F1 fans alike, and the legacy that the Nürburgring race had on F1. Erin, tell us about your first reaction to the film.
My reaction to the movie was a mix of emotions, excitement, and adrenaline. Before watching, I had no knowledge of F1. And when Peter suggested the film, I had just started engaging with the sport. I had no idea the backstory, including Niki Lauda's accident. Watching that unfold on screen was so impactful for me. It really showed the danger of the sport, the level of skill required, and the incredible mental strength of the drivers. These athletes truly walk the razor's edge between adrenaline and risk. Inna, what about you? What is your reaction to the movie?
I first saw the movie in theaters. I knew nothing about Formula One, had no idea what this rivalry was about. But I'm always interested in movies about rivalries, especially when the two personalities are so different as Hunt and Lauda. When I was in 8th grade, we had to watch this movie Amadeus about the rivalry of 18th century musicians, Mozart and Salieri. And it was one of the most riveting stories I've ever seen depicted on screen. But the world that they were inhabiting is not inherently competitive. So I thought if you bring this dynamic into a world that is set up for you to compete, it would just be amazing. And I was proven right. So, Erin, what was your favorite scene in Rush?
There are quite a few, but my favorite is when he meets his wife, Marlena, for the first time when they're leaving the party. Their conversation about the performance and stability of her car gave me a chuckle. And he's like, God gave me a good head, but an even better body part to be able to feel what's going on with the car. And she was like, it's fine. And then 2 seconds later, they're broken down. But the best part was they were picked up because he was a Ferrari driver. That to me was a good mix of humor in the movie. And it shows how revered drivers are, especially a Ferrari driver by Italians. What about you?
I completely agree. That whole sequence of scenes was extremely memorable. I also love another moment between Niki and Marlena. It's when they are waiting to get married and he tells her, I will not bring you flowers. I will not hold your hands. I will forget your birthday. But if I was going to do it with anyone, it might as well be you. And she takes a pause and says, oh, a poet. And I just thought not only was that a funny moment, but also I love their acting in the moment because both actors, even though they're saying what they're saying, their eyes are full of love. And I thought that was such a powerful moment. But the funniest moment for me was when Niki first tests Ferrari car and he can't believe how awful it is. And the mechanic goes with, what's wrong with it? And he's like, it drives like a pig. And he goes, you can't say that. And Niki asks why. He goes, it's a Ferrari. And Niki's answer is uses a lot of words that we're not going to repeat, but it's worth just going back to that scene.
Overall, I loved the movie. The most inspiring takeaway for me was Niki Lauda's sheer determination and iron will. The scenes where he was trying to put his helmet on were excruciating to watch. I could not imagine the amount of pain that he must have been in those very few weeks right after such a horrific accident. But it is a powerful reminder of resilience and perseverance. And it truly was his determination to keep moving forward. And when he saw James Hunt, because Hunt had a great deal of guilt over the fact that he swayed the room because no one should have raced given the conditions. And he told Lauda, I feel responsible. And Lauda said, you are responsible, but you're also responsible for getting me back into the seat. I thought that was pretty remarkable of his character to be able to do that to someone, especially who is such a fierce competitor of yours.
Absolutely. And I agree completely that scene was one of the most powerful in the whole movie.
What is your take on how Hunt and Lauda were portrayed in the film? And why was their rivalry compelling even for someone with no prior F1 knowledge?
I think that this was Chris Hemsworth's best performance. And so, in terms of who was more engaging, I think it has more to do with my preferences for the kind of characters I like depicted in movies. So, for me, even though I liked Chris Hemsworth's performance, I think Daniel Bruhl really brought the character so much to life that you forgot you were watching an actor and you were watching Niki Lauda. And I think that is actually my barometer for how good the movie is, because there's not that many actors who make you forget that these are the actors that play this character.
His acting was phenomenal, and it was hard to remember at times that really isn't Niki Lauda. That is an actor portraying him.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Erin, because in Gunther Steiner's Survive to Drive, he has a little aside where he talks about how he asked Niki Lauda what he thought about his portrayal in Rush. And Niki Lauda, in all humility, said he is completely responsible for this performance because he taught Daniel Bruhl how to be Niki Lauda. Not how to play him, but how to be him, which I think tells you so much about Niki Lauda as a person.
Yes.
But also, Daniel Bruhl is an amazing student because he took all of those lessons and made the best thing he could with it. Because, I mean, somebody who's that abrasive has that personality that can seem obnoxious and obviously does not bring many friends. But to make him sympathetic, even before his accident, because of course, after the accident, you cannot not root for him because it was just so horrific. And they show you, I think, in tasteful detail, but also they don't shy away from a lot of the gory details. But even before that happens, even though you see all his foibles, you see his vulnerability. And for me, that is so much more relatable that, you know, James Hunt, who had so many gifts, including like amazing looks, charming personality, and just upper crust upbringing, that he can bring in, you know, so many admirers very easily. Whereas everything for Niki Lauda, except even being a driver, came a lot harder. And that, I think, is definitely more relatable.
I would also add to that and say I watched the Niki Lauda, The Untold Story on Netflix. And, you know, he talked about the accident and what happened and this scene with graft on his head and the doctor ripped it off. I mean, it was just unbelievable to listen to. And I did see something somewhere where Niki Lauda had said that about 80% of the movie is correct. Hollywood dialed up some things and downplayed others, but about 80% of the film is accurate, which is pretty good, I would say, for what they're trying to depict.
I think for a Hollywood biopic, that is impressive.
We have talked about the movie and F1 and how it affects non-F1 fans. So, Inna, if you were not already an F1 fan, would this movie have hooked you on the sport?
Unfortunately, it did not. And I don't think it would hook me into the sport just by watching the movie. Again, the story is beyond engaging. The trajectory is fantastic. And the focus on the human element. Well, first of all, that's what I love in my movies, but also given Hunt and Lauda's backstory, it just makes the whole experience very rewarding. But there was not enough clarity of what Formula One was all about. It gave enough of a background so you can follow the story and you can keep track of what's going on. There really wasn't much for Formula One to really understand. Like, for instance, there was no concept of constructor's title, or the fact that Ferrari won that constructor's title. There was no concept, what does it mean to be a teammate? Like, and that it's a very complicated relationship.
They tried the teammate a little bit with Clay, like, I share
They
information, you share information with me, but they really didn't dive into that dynamic.
It also didn't cover a lot of personalities that were at the time of Formula One. They mentioned Andretti, who's in the movie, but I don't think they even show him.
I think you catch a glimpse of his car
Yeah, so
once,
that's like,
maybe twice, and that's it. It was not anything of substance.
I also feel like, for instance, the race that Niki comes back was Monza. And so when you see everyone running on track, I mean, the impression the movie gives, like everyone thought what he did was so heroic. But that's one of the perks of Monza, is that it allows you to go on to the track. The movie did a great job of giving you enough context to follow the movie, but not enough to be interested in Formula One on its own merits.
If I were to guess what Ron Howard and Peter were trying to do, would be to depict the rivalry and the accident, everything that Niki Lauda did. I would be surprised, based on how the film was presented, if part of it was to attract new F1 fans. Although one would think that if you're putting a movie out about F1, that you would garner some new fans from that. I would not have become a new F1 fan solely based on the movie. However, I was already in the process of watching, so I don't know. We'll have to ask our viewers who are brand new if they've seen it and what their opinion is on the movie or how that's translating today.
We would be remiss not to discuss the 1976 Nürburgring race, which is the key race in Rush, and how it remains one of the most pivotal moments in Formula One history. Known as the Green Hell, the circuit was infamous for its extreme length, challenging layout, and inherent danger. I thought it was so impressive that Lauda, before his accident, held the track record of the fastest lap, which he did in 7 minutes. And just for context, based on the fact that most tracks that the current grid goes to do not go beyond a minute and even less than a minute, the fact that it took him 7 minutes shows you how incredibly long and challenging that track was. Lauda's accident highlighted the perilous nature of racing on such tracks and brought safety concerns into Formula One to the forefront. In the aftermath, drivers and teams began advocating for improved safety measures, leading to significant changes in the sport.
These ripple effects of the event can still be felt today. There's track safety. Formula One tracks now adhere to stringent safety standards with better runoff areas, barriers, and circuits designed amid minimizing risk to the drivers. Advances in driver safety gear, including fire-resistant suits, helmets, these were influenced by the increased awareness of the sport's danger. The cars themselves have undergone continuous improvements to enhance crash survivability, such as reinforced cockpits and the introduction of the Halo device in 2018. Lewis Hamilton and a number of other drivers did not initially support the safety measures because they believed it would slow the car down and affect performance. However, the Halo driver protection device is what kept Hamilton safe after Verstappen's Red Bull ended up on top of their Mercedes at the first chicane during the Italian Grand Prix in 2021. So it was a good thing that that Halo was there.
Absolutely.
The Nürburgring incident also fostered a greater emphasis on driver well-being, with teams and officials more willing to prioritize safety over tradition or spectacle.
And I just have to interject about well-being. Did you notice how much Hunt smoked and drank and what he ate before the races? I just cannot imagine any driver on today's grid, even when they're not actively participating in the grind of the tour, like, yes, they sometimes overdo it with the drink, but not to any extent that Hunt is. I can't imagine them smoking. And
No.
poor Lewis Hamilton with his vegan diet. I can just imagine him seeing this movie and going, what?
Well, I think the 70s are very different than now. I mean, one of their big sponsors is Heineken Zero. They talk about, you don't drink and drive, and the whole culture seems to be very different on the grid.
It's like when they show him oysters before race. I'm like, there is no way that could
Ugh.
ever be a good idea.
I love oysters, but the thought of having oysters before you get in a car go that fast, and I mean, I don't know what their G forces were like in the 70s, but there is no way if I was an F1 driver, would be my meal of choice to consume before getting behind the wheel. Not even
Not at
close.
all.
I'd say that would be in part to societal standards, sports standards, and just the advancement of society coming from where we were in the 70s at the time.
But I also want to say that technically you can say that we took, it went closer to how Lauda saw
Your body
the
is a
preparation.
temple. You have to think about what we see in the off season from the drivers on their social media. It's their workouts, it's their diet. Esteban Ocon was having his smoothie before he went into strength training. They are either running with penguins in Antarctica or skiing in the Alps or jumping out of a helicopter and snowboarding, as Hamilton posted. They are the most physically fit athletes. I mean, because their neck strength, they do so much neck strength and neck work to handle those G forces. I just can't even imagine.
Me neither, but I also want to mention that both of our favorite drivers love to fly jets. And
Well,
according to Niki, that builds discipline and keeps you stay within the rules, which now that I think about it, yeah, that's a good. I mean, that's not what, for instance, Charles Leclerc says that he's doing this for, but I'm hoping he takes the good with the adventurous side
but
of it
I
as
will
well.
say our drivers were extremely attractive in their fighter pilot gear.
A lot of people think that women like Formula One because the drivers are super good looking. And I just want to mention the fact that that is not true, although that does not hurt. And listen, the aesthetics matter. And even though the movie shows you that like Lauda had the talent that surpassed whatever deficiency he saw in himself in terms of looks and other people overlooked him for it, I'm just glad we don't have that problem. We have amazing drivers who are also amazingly good looking. I mean, that's the best of both worlds.
It is like the most handsome grid out there.
Yeah.
I think we support the best looking driver combo out there for sure.
I completely agree. We have seen over the last 20 plus years how these advanced safety measures have impacted the sport. Romain Grosjean survived his 2020 wreck, where his car caught fire because of these vast improvements. Although a number of advanced steps have been made, there are a number of drivers who have unfortunately paid the ultimate price. Antoine Hubert, who raced in F2, died in 2019, which was heartbreaking to watch in Drive to Survive. Of course, Charles Leclerc is very familiar with tragedy since his godfather, Jules Bianchi, had an accident and died in 2015. As Rush mentioned, each year 25 drivers started and 2 died each year. And now that number has been reduced to hopefully never, but so far like one in a decade.
The legacy of the 1976 Nürburgring race has shaped modern Formula One into a sport that balances high speed excitement with a commitment to safety. While the danger will always remain a part of the motorsport, the lessons learned from that fateful day have undoubtedly saved countless lives and continue to influence the sport's evolution.
Rush highlights the raw charisma of Hunt and the relentless drive of Lauda, characters who transcended the sport to become icons of their era. Modern F1 drivers like Lewis Hamilton also carry cultural influence, but today's F1 fans benefit from a global media presence which has created unprecedented levels of engagement.
That is a really great point, Ina. The levels of engagement are at a place that the sport has never seen before. How do you think F1 handles the influx of new fans while still maintaining the allure and prestige that the sport is known for?
I think F1 is thriving, and they're doing this by embracing social media. The Grill the Grid videos are terrific showcases for drivers' personalities that then are shared among different social platforms, bringing visibility to millions, maybe even billions of viewers. I also think, again, this is part of them embracing the more playful side of the sport. Is that, for instance, in 2024, before Monaco, when Oscar Piastri asked to find connections to Monaco because he couldn't find them in his family tree, Charles Leclerc jokingly responded that he would adopt him. And so Formula One actually added Leclerc to Oscar Piastri's name when posting times for an FP1 session. And I thought that was brilliant and also very smart of them to show that they can play along. And agreeing to participate in Drive to Survive was a stroke of genius for F1, since this collaboration led to increased popularity and especially bringing more women fans into the sport. I think the level of fandom that it brought to Formula One would not have happened if that collaboration did not bear fruit.
Oh, definitely not. I saw a 2022 poll that found 53% of adult US F1 fans said the show was the reason they became interested in F1 races.
And I just want to add, it's not only the fact that they agreed to do a reality show about Formula One, it's that they found producers who could make it interesting and exciting and how well the narrative was being portrayed.
Well, I think everyone wants to hear a good story, and their producers did an excellent job of weaving all parts together to really tell an amazing story within the paddock and the teams and the individual drivers and those personalities and how all of it comes together.
I agree. I mean, they chose the right people to feature and deviate up enough information that you can gradually become more and more enmeshed into this world. Since the creation of Formula One in 1950, there have been 5 women to compete in the Grand Prix. As the sport evolves, how does the role of women in Formula One evolve as well, especially with the formation of the F1 Academy?
Female drivers remain underrepresented. However, women are making significant strides in other areas of Formula One, including engineering, team management, media, and leadership. Initiatives like the F1 Academy provide improved access, mentorship, and financial backing, all barriers that have historically limited female participation in the past. We will be reviewing the F1 Academy docuseries when it is released, so stay tuned for more on this topic.
And I just want to add that we have a lot of firsts this season. Esteban Ocon has a female race engineer, which is the first time that has happened. The second is Hannah Schmidt, who is the strategist for Red Bull. And you sometimes see her aggravated face during times when Max Verstappen is not having the best of times at a race, but she's being promoted to head of strategy.
It's exciting to see what F1 Academy is doing and how females are getting more involved at various levels within the sport. So that is great to see. But Inna, as we wrap up our review of Rush, which current F1 driver reminds you of Lauda and Hunt?
Well, for me, Lauda's personality is very close to Max Verstappen. It's the same prickliness, straightforwardness, are very reminiscent of Lauda, although I have to say his driving style is all Hunt. Because that going for broke anytime you go into a corner, and if we crash, that is pure Max. And I honestly think that scene that we referenced earlier, where Lauda reacts that the Ferrari drives like a pig, I can only imagine if Max ever ends up in Ferrari and it is not as perfect as he expects, he would very much act like Lauda. Hunt is harder to compare. I think of the drivers that were in the grid last year, Danny Ricciardo would come closer because of his sunny disposition, how charming he is, and how irreverent he can be at times. However, he does not have the player persona that went with Hunt. On the current grid, I think, again, more from the personality aspect than the lifestyle aspect, it would be Lando Norris, although it's not just because he also is a McLaren driver.
I would say for me, there are a few drivers that remind me of Lauda's personality based on a variety of factors. I do agree that Max is similar because of the bluntness, his focus, and his desire to win. You could even say both have been called a hero and a villain. If you compare Hunt's charisma and self-assuredness, then I would hands down say Valtteri Bottas. But of course, Daniel Ricciardo, I know he isn't on the grid, but the amount of charisma and personality that that man has, my goodness, you just can't not include him. And I will say that though none of the current grid seems to embody the Playboy image that Hunt did, most of them seem to have girlfriends. I find it hard to believe that the single ones wouldn't have women flocking to them. So maybe PR teams just do a better job of keeping that on the down low than they did in the 1970s.
I also want to add they have to focus so much on fitness and, eating well. Going to sleep early kind of interferes with that player mentality.
I could see that. Their bodies have to be as fine-tuned as their car.
Exactly. So I think that kind of makes them more focused and less likely. Like, for instance, I know before Monaco, Charles Leclerc actually cooked his own meals. And I don't know if that's because that just provides some structure or comfort for him, or the fact that he didn't trust the fact that if he was going to go out, he would not get food poisoning or risk. And that man
Or the
deserves
fact
all
he'd
the
get
luck.
mobbed because everyone's in Monaco and it's not that big, and he probably wanted a moment of peace.
He's always mocked. So yeah, that totally tracks.
So whether it's Hunt versus Lauda or Verstappen versus Hamilton, the sport continues to deliver thrilling rivalries, incredible feats of engineering, and human stories that resonate across generations. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update.
Would also love to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts on today's discussion, suggestions for F1 books, shows, or movies you want us to dive into, or even a shout out to your favorite driver. Connect with us on Instagram, YouTube, or X, or drop us an email at riddingthegrid@gmail.com. We want your ideas to fuel this podcast, so don't be shy.
Thanks for joining us on Reading the Grid. Keep your engines running and your pages turning. Until next time.